All right, this is Jim Carty of the Patch, and I am here with Matt Schofield. How you doing, Mr. Schofield?
I'm doing great. Well, I'm doing all right. It's not been a great year so far. So,
You
to
know,
answer the question truthfully, I just got back from England 2 days ago after laying my mother to rest. She passed away a few weeks ago. So, actually, it's been the worst possible thing in my life so far the last couple of weeks. So, I don't want to dwell on that, but it's hard not to. It's hard to say, oh, everything's great, you know. So, with
yeah,
the loss in my life I've experienced, you know. So.
you have my condolences. I
Thank you.
actually, an hour before this, I found out one of my close childhood friends passed of cancer.
And the condolences back to you. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just it's like the icing on top of a shit cake. You know what I mean? Of the last couple of years, man. You know, and yeah, not to dwell too much on it, but I should have been back for Christmas for the first time seeing her for 2 years because of the pandemic. You know,
yeah.
and we were supposed to have Christmas together, and she got sick just before Christmas, and so then the visit back was cancelled, and then but not expecting to find ourselves where we are now, and so the visit it wasn't the family reunion we had in mind. Let's put it that way, you know. So
But you did get together, and sometimes that's very cathartic, and you know, I got into the blues in college, and I can tell you there are people in the music business that are much older than I that I became very close with, and they passed, along the line here, and
hmm
I always thought I had more time.
yeah,
Big Jack
exactly.
Johnson was like a dad to me,
Yeah, man.
um, I I kicked myself for not going down when he was in the hospital, and
Right.
my money was tight, and I justified it that I didn't have the dough, and then he was gone, and I just always thought I had more time.
Yeah, we always do. She wasn't old, 69, you know, it's nothing these days. And 2 months ago, I'd have never imagined in a million years we'd have just said farewell. But
Yeah,
I'm lucky, you know. There was nothing left unsaid. You know, we had a great relationship. She's everything. All my best qualities are entirely from her. She gets full credit, and amazing woman. And yeah, you know, just gonna miss her every day. And
yeah.
honestly, I'm ready. I had to cancel last month's shows because of it, so I've barely touched the guitar in the month, probably the least I've touched it in 30 years. So I'm ready to play some blues next week, let me
Good,
tell you.
good. And that should be good for the soul.
Exactly, I'm
You
ready to
know,
get it out.
and we're going to see you at the Catherine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center on March 10th, and it starts
Yeah,
at 7:30. Um, have you been to the Cape before? I
I
think
have not. I have many friends who've told me how fantastic it is. Actually, my best friend manager and fellow musician Jay Stallman's a Connecticut fellow,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, Jay was keen to get me in there, actually working with my booking agent. So he's been telling me how great it is. My partner, my girlfriend Christine Tambakis from New York, singer who's well known up in the Connecticut region as well from her years of gigging up there. Also will be there with me and speaks highly of it. Yeah, so I have a lot of connections with the area through musician friends since I've been working with Jay for the past 5 years, and since me and Christine have been together for the past 5 years. She has had a long career of working with different bands and musicians up there. So it's kind of like a second spot for me, Connecticut now, actually, you know.
Good,
So
good. I settled back here in Old Lyme, the adjacent town to where the venue is, 5
mm,
years ago, and I grew up here. I was living here from 78 to about 84, and love it. Right on the ocean, of course, and just easy living in a little more relaxed atmosphere, and it couldn't be more beautiful.
yeah, yeah. That's actually I met my girlfriend there. She's from the Bronx, but she was doing a gig. We got introduced through Jay, so we met in actually it was in Fairfield, a little further along the coast there. But I was up there doing shows with Jay. So yeah, it's the whole state is very dear to my heart these
Good,
days.
good. So it's love this time, is it? 5 years, and she's kept you around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Right on.
that's
And where are you settled in the U.S. now? I see you've moved to the U.S. permanently.
Yeah, I'm based here full time still. not a citizen, still on my visa, and my official status, in fact, this is a good one. My official status is an alien of extraordinary ability. That's what I have to be certified as. I'm not making that up. That's, but I'm based out of Jupiter, Florida, actually, these days. So it's nice to be back here. It was a whole month back in the UK in the sleet and the hail, and I don't miss that, I gotta say. So it's been it's 75 degrees here right now. So from someone who grew up not in that, it's been very nice for the past. When did I start?
Where's all the sun coming from?
Yeah, I'm spoiled now.
Vitamin D anymore?
Yeah. So, I think it's 2014. I ended up starting to base myself out of Florida, but a lot of back and forth between New York City and a lot of time in Connecticut. And
Sure.
I've been in California on and off for 30 years. My dad is a U.S. citizen, and he's been in California for 30 years. So I used to spend a lot of time out there. And before that, I was up in Toronto a lot, so I know about winters as well. So it's been wherever. Well, for a long time, it's been wherever I lay my hat. It's been the situation as a traveling musician. But been very lucky to get this little place, get my little home studio going, and put some roots down somewhere and a very nice place it is too, especially when you tour as much as I did pre-pandemic anyway. It's a nice place to come back to and kick off your shoes and relax between hurtling around the world.
You need that relaxing little respite. But it's funny how you become a citizen of the world when you tour the way people in your career do.
Yeah, in fact, it's crazy with the pandemic how it all just came to a stop, because the previous 2 years before that, when we had no idea what was coming, so 18 and 19, I did either a transatlantic or a trans-Pacific flight at least once every single month, apart from 1 month of both of those years. So it really was, over here, over there, half the month gone, back here, recoup, off to the next one, so and fingers crossed it will get back to that, because I love it. It sort of keeps me. Yeah. That's what I always dreamt of. So we were sort of finally there, and then the rug got pulled out for all of us, as we know, and it's still going to be, it's dribs and drabs still. It's difficult. Scheduling is difficult still. Like one of the gigs on this tour next week is a reschedule from 2020 that we finally going to do again, and then my gigs in April next month back in Europe this is the third rescheduling of them since 2020. So it was still picking up pieces, so I think maybe next year it'll be like all new tour dates finally.
yeah, let's hope. So part of that being a citizen of the world and touring so much, you get to know people in every city and every region. And it just so happens you're friends with my buddy Tomo Fujita.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And, I remember taking him out to the Regatta Bar, and he sat in with you, and I don't know if he was fixing to sit in with you or not, but you called him up, and man, it was just burning.
Well, Tomo's one of my favorite people to play with. He actually coined the term that we have a blues conversation. That was his term, and that's what it feels like when we play. First of all, music, especially blues, being an international language, and as Ronnie Earl called it, language of the soul, being blues, one of my favorites from back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's very much true. And so Tomo actually, we knew of each other, through the internet. I mean, probably 15 years ago, and I met him, I think, at the first NAMM show I went to in LA. I think it was in 2010, and I was just starting to tour the US then. So we ran into each other there, hit it off, and then I was playing my first show in Boston. Harper's Ferry was the venue.
I think I was probably there. I lived in the place. I went to Boston College just up the road, and
yeah, well, then you would have been one of the few at my first appearance there. It wasn't that busy, but Tomo came out and sat in, and I don't think he's missed a gig sitting in with us ever since in 12 years now. So, and he just came out in December. We did Natick and so he was there, and we had a great time as usual. And yeah, actually, he was responsible for helping me to get a foot in the door with going to Japan. I
Right.
started
Very popular back home in Japan. Yep.
yeah, so I actually introduced him to some guys who make pedals from Japan. Who they'd introduced themselves to me. I introduced Tomo to them, and then between Tomo and them, they put an idea for me to go out to Japan and do some shows with Tomo. And then since then, apart from the pandemic, I've been getting to go to Japan every year and building a following there. So that's a great market for me as well. And that was a dream come true to visit there. So
Nice.
then I got to take Tomo back to the UK, and we did a guitar workshop weekend where we taught together so yeah, it's been wonderful, man. Really great.
And speaking of teaching, Tomo's gotten great exposure lately, being a guitar teacher to John Mayer, and
Of course.
John loves to pop into his class at Berklee College of Music.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
So folks get to have a little frame of reference who Tomo is. He's kind of the man behind, the man or woman oftentimes.
Absolutely. Well, he's a sensei, so
He really is. And you're on one of my favorite record labels now, Mascot, which has, I've seen footage of you, Tomo, and Eric Gales, and I just wanted to mention that the venue you're playing, the Kate, has a bunch of your label mates coming soon. Albert Cummings is coming March 24th. We've got Walter Trout, who's on Mascot, April 7th. Eric Gales is coming May 17th. And then other great blues show, Laurie Bell is the night after yours on March.
Yeah, okay.
And we've got
great players, man. I'm actually not on Mascot now, just to correct you
slightly. Well, you have Mascot product, but
yeah, the last album was on Mascot. We parted ways a couple of years ago, and we won't get too much into it, but it was all good making that record with them,
Yeah.
So and yeah, at the time, actually the guy that got me or gave me a shove to go with them at the time was Robben Ford, so he was obviously been one of my heroes since I was a kid, and I got to know him, and he was very supportive, and so we were both on that together. It was at that point, it was me, Robin, Robert Cray, so many of my formative influences. It was like it was a good time, but at that point,
flypaper for great guitar players at Mascot.
Oh yeah, they had everybody at that point, but obviously Robin was the thumbs up for me there, and we actually, again, not to get too far into it, but we actually were working on or starting to put together a record together a few years back with Mascot, and that didn't quite pan out, and that's where things kind of started changing a little bit, and where we both ended up moving away from it. So maybe that record will still happen with someone at some point, but that would have been cool, kind of a Matt and Robin album, obviously that would have been a good full circle for me, and very much again the sort of sensei student type situation. I mean, I've been listening to him since I was 15 years old, so.
Yeah, I mean, he's just amazing. So tell me about your current band, because I was watching some footage online and just love your rhythm section and your B3 player, dynamite. I mean, so do you use a US based and then a UK based band, or the guys always traveled you?
Yeah, it's a moving target. I have a pool of guys I draw upon, so most of whom I've worked with, many of them for 30 years in some cases. I mean, so my original organ player, Johnny Henderson from the UK, we went to high school together. So we've been playing since 96, together. He doesn't come to the US anymore. He did do my first sort of 6-7 years of touring in the US, but he became a dad, 2 young boys. So he kind of stopped doing that, and visas are prohibitively expensive, by the way. If you're not going to be able to be here touring all the time, then it doesn't make financial sense.
Right.
So then I said, well, I'm not going to do organ trio for without Johnny, that was because that was the thing. So I've had a bunch of different great bass players and still use them. My tours that were just rescheduled that will be happening again in May with a guy called Dwayne Pate on bass, who played with Robben, played with Tower of Power, the
Right.
Ford Brothers band. So Dwayne's been doing it. My current drummer is Raul Valdez, who originally from Cuba, but he's based here in Florida. He was with Lucky Peterson for the last decade, right up until Lucky's passing.
Lucky always had great show bands, like in the
Yeah, and Raul, you know, coming from Cuba, and then he moved to Dallas, and Lucky just put him through the school of the blues. So,
yeah, man.
so I've been so actually the last couple of years pre-pandemic, I was touring with Raul and Lucky's bass player Tim Waits, who was so they were a rhythm section with Lucky, and when they weren't out with Lucky, they were coming out with me. I kind of like grabbed them when I could, you know. And then obviously, unfortunately, Lucky passed. So then since the pandemic, Tim decided to take a break from touring. But I'd run into an incredible B3 player who's actually out of Deerfield, Massachusetts, Darby Wolf, who was with me at the Regatta Bar, actually, Darby. So that was, so now Tim's staying home, so Darby's doing the organ trio. So that's the band we'll be with is me, Raoul, and Darby. So it's
I was seeing Darby online there. I think I saw a show. There's a Funky Biscuit. Was that Darby? Maybe.
Yeah, could have been. I had this great B3 player called Adam Scone, actually, that's been playing with me down here in Florida as well. He's
then, but
he's a kind of a protege of Dr. Lonnie Smith, who lived down here as well.
I like them. I love the rhythmic playing of Dr. Lonnie.
Mm-hmm. So I'm lucky to have this pool, you know, and obviously with the way touring is at the moment, it's hard for everybody to be available for everything. You know, you have to mix and match a little bit, which I don't typically. I prefer not to, but you know, everybody's got to make a living, and if I can't keep everybody busy for 3/4 of the month, then yeah, I get them when I can. But I'm lucky. Raoul pretty much does everything, and we're doing the organ trio thing with Darby as much as we can in the Northeast because he's enough of a maniac that he'll drive his own B3 rig everywhere, you know. So he's a real organ player because he carries a real B3. So.
No, I enjoyed watching the interview you did with Josh Smith, who's another great guitarist and good pal of yours.
Yeah,
and
man.
We got into the discussion, one that I totally agree with both of you, that you know there's a lot of depth and breadth to a lot of players like yourself, other than straight blues. And you talked about BB, and I knew BB some, and he loved Django.
Yeah,
he could play the snot out of the jazz stuff.
Absolutely, that's the great irony to me, that the king of the blues, you know, half of his formative influences were jazz players, you know, and that was BB's great offering to the world. Really, was bringing that deep Delta down home blues together with the big band sound and you know, sophistication of the big band jazz that he loved, and then Django, Charlie Christian, you know, T-Bone being the big band kind of sound, the horns and stuff like that, and putting all that together with, you know, where he came from in Mississippi, and you get what to me is still the perfect combination of sophistication and soul, you know. So,
but other than that Louis Jordan record that he did, I think he lamented the fact that he never made a straight jazz record.
Yeah, and I think he probably would downplay his abilities as well about it, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that over the years people told him to not do that. Do you know what I mean? The record industry is a fickle place.
Marketing you as blues, you can't go out there and do that, dude.
Exactly. I mean, they didn't even used to like marketing him as a guitar player, you know, and that's something that's carried on. I remember hearing an interview even with Vince Gill, you know, who's an incredible guitar player, and they said the record label didn't want him to have his guitar on the cover, you know, because they wanted him to be a singer, you know, and he's obviously an incredible singer as well, and one of my favorite singers. But yeah, there's always that marketing angle getting in the way of just the artist being able to be fully who they are. You know, it's something we all experience in one way or another, you know.
Well, what I was going to ask you is, so you definitely have that depth of, you know, having jazz chops and, you know, other skills on the guitar, and I love the organ trio.
Yeah.
Where did you pick up your love of the organ trio, and who were your influences in that kind of combo, if you had any particular?
Yeah, you know, first of all, it was just the organ in general. All the bands I liked, I loved that B3 sound, you know. So then it was actually really growing up with Johnny. And he was Johnny Henderson, so he's on my first well, he's on all my records actually, but the first 3 or 4 are like organ trio with him playing the bass. And so, he's a couple of years younger than me. So, and I was friends with his older brother in school. So I'd go over. He played guitar, his brother. So I go over to the house and we'd be jamming on guitars, and then Johnny's in the background becoming this incredible organ player. So I probably even heard about those guys through him as a teenager. Do you know what I mean? And so Jimmy Smith, Jimmy McGriff, Lonnie Smith, all that stuff, And then we were getting into stuff like the Meters and funky New Orleans stuff, which is, Art Neville on the B3, not specifically organ trio, but a lot of organ involved. And then, just I guess when we realized that Johnny could play the bass, well, first of all, Johnny was also he was hearing all the blues records that we were listening to with all the great B3 players that would back up the guitarists we liked as well. So he was learning from, Bruce Katz and Reese Winans and all the guys that played with the loud guitar players. So he kind of was he was getting the traditional organ stuff and then that. So then when we realized Johnny could play the bass parts like a real B3 player, it just made sense because it was just a bigger sound for a trio. And particularly back then, we're talking 25 years ago, everybody wanted to be Stevie Ray, you know what I mean? And of course, Stevie's one of my biggest influences, but I didn't want to play the same kind of music as him exactly. So at the time, it seemed like some kind of different sound that we could have, and I thought that'd be a good idea. It turns out it wasn't. People are like, why don't you get a real bass player? Oh, it's so jazzy, But anyway, we persevered, and I kind of found my voice as a player within that context. It allowed me to not have to be the blues rock guy, doing it the same as everyone else. It allowed me to. It was like my small big band because I couldn't afford more than the trio. Still can't. Who can? So I wanted to be BB, So it had that more orchestration. It had the more harmony to it, and it just sort of we fell into it in a way, and just drawing upon all the aspects of the organ that we love, So and another band very important, I should say, was a band called Soul Live, who were.
Krasno's great too.
Yeah, and so it was like my very first record. We were playing like shuffles and jazzy blues, and also throwing a Meters tune in and a Soul Life tune in. And I'm like 23, 24 years old on it. It's a little live record we put out, but it was like all those things at once. New Orleans, sort of funk, sort of Soul Live, and Tower of Power we loved as well. Chester Thompson, great B3 player, and then the blues. So that's sort of how we ended up, and so it became the foil to my guitar, if you know what I mean, the organ. So I've reluctantly played power trio, as you'd call it, with bass many times now. It's more through necessity than desire, and I've got pretty good at that as well over the years, without having it be totally the kind of like blues rock. But I still I prefer having the organ there,
Absolutely. Well, I'm an Allman Brothers nut. I mean,
Right, there you go.
Greg wasn't the biggest virtuoso on the B3, but you could always go, that's Greg.
Exactly, and what a great accompanist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dynamite, yeah. What else was I going to hit you with here? Let me see. Well, I mean, we're in violent agreement about having that depth and breadth. And I guess, what can we expect you to bring to the stage at the Cape for material? I mean, you mentioned Stevie, and tonally and in your phrasing, I definitely hear Stevie. But as you said, you are not as over the top and in your face as Stevie in your attack.
Yeah, because I come from BB first, But I love that Stevie. Stevie was definitely the tone kind of influence, with the Strat thing. That's what made me I wanted that kind of sound, that bell clear.
Yeah, you got that in beautifully. Yeah.
So that was definitely a thing. But I like the more melodic side of BB. I like the brighter sound that BB had, and that's something that somebody like say Robben Ford kind of carried on with his own jazz influences. And then Robin, of course, was the person that introduced me to jazz. Really, other than what Johnny was playing or I was hearing the organ stuff, and Oscar Peterson became one of my real influences. Um, so we just try and put all the stuff we like together, and that's really what. But I'm really, this is my favorite lineup I've had in a while with Raoul and Darby. So I hope people enjoy it as much as I do, because I'm having a good time playing with this particular combination of people, and especially in a trio every person is so vital, and as I say, Darby's the first person I've really done organ trio with since Johnny, because it's a certain kind of organ trio thing, it's not just we're not playing traditional jazz organ stuff. So so I'm really excited about it myself. I just I love this particular lineup of musicians, and Christine will be coming out and doing a few songs. She's with us as well, incredible vocalist. So she's been joining us, and that's nice for me to. I enjoy being able to step back, and I can play guitar differently when someone else sings a couple of songs as well. So it's again, it takes it away from just being like a shred fest. I like music. Do you know what I mean? Like, in fact, Raoul was over here last night. We were doing some grilling, and we were listening to Barbara Streisand and Julie Andrews, like singing together and stuff. We like all kinds of stuff, So
I don't know if you're a Sirius XM subscriber. I love mine, and I put on Seriously Sinatra all the time.
there you go. In fact, we were also talking about like I've got on the vinyl back there, Live at the Sands with Count Basie, Sinatra. Yeah, we just like music, So
But I
that's
think that the current artists can be really choppy and just lose the medley, and like it's there's got to be that element of swing and a medley, and
yeah, it's all swing to me. Everything I like swings. The funky stuff
exactly.
swings, blues swings, BB swings. The meters, it swings. It's funky. That's what funky is to me, is swinging. James Brown is swinging. So that's really the whole thing. And if it swings, I like it.
You you and me both.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm so excited to see you. And are you touring behind any particular record? Are we gonna?
No, in fact, I've got two in the I got one and a half in the bag. I got one done with my original organ trio that was supposed to be being mixed in April 2020. So that hasn't been done yet, because we were going back to the UK to do that. And and then it was like, well, I can't tour with that lineup over here, and I don't know when things will get back to touring in Europe as like I used to. So we've kind of hung on to that in the meantime, because these days the only reason to put out a record is to kind of promo the tours, So that was such a specific album. So I actually started another new album with Raoul, my current drummer, and we're going to do my BB album with horns and like basically go for broke. And I don't know if I'll be able to afford to tour it, but we're going to go for it, and we can offer it to festivals as like my big band essentially. And because I'll be 45 this year, so I want to be BB, and I don't hear that many people doing that stuff anymore, like the uptown like that, because it is expensive. But maybe some festivals will have faith that we can deliver that kind of big sort of, and obviously we'd mix it. It'd be like BB meets Tower of Power or something, the horns, and that's why I want to do that. That's what I want to do next. So I'm kind of going for it on the record and hoping that I can pull up the slack, with the gigs and take it out there on the road. So that's the plan,
Yeah. I was very fortunate. I'm a little older than you, 51. And, when Stevie passed, a lot of people got turned on to the blues. And I was able to go over to, other than Harper's Ferry and Johnny D's and the Regatta Bar, we had the original House of Blues in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And, Lucky would go in there and have a horn section that would just melt the paint off the wall.
Yeah.
Lonnie Brooks and, other folks would just, the top stars were bringing, just a wall of sound and a show band. you know?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And there's a logic in it. Somebody who's done it very, very successfully, the Tedeschi Trucks Band. I mean, that's a 14-piece band,
That's
but it's
America's great big band, little big band now.
yeah, but that's like a festival headlining machine now. And we
Totally.
live, I say this so often now, we live in such a visual world that it wouldn't matter if you're the Jimi Hendrix experience. It's really hard to come out as a trio these days on a headline slot on a festival and have people's attention there. It doesn't matter. You could be as good as you could be Jimi Hendrix, but people need the visual broadness of
Yes,
something. They need that wall of sound, like you say. So I'm like, well, maybe we should just go for it. You know, maybe we should go for it. So,
absolutely should.
you know, dress for the job you want, right? You know?
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, this was a ball. You know, any last words for your fans before I cut you loose to your own?
I just want to say I appreciate people coming out and supporting live music again at the moment. I was really worried how it was going to be, and the last run we did up north in December, just at the beginning of Omicron, but it was great. We sold out a couple of the rooms, just jam-packed, wonderful venues, and so I just really appreciate people like taking that chance again to come out and support live music, because without that we're done, you know. So it's all about the people that are there and still love it, and we're going to play our asses off because thanks to folks for coming out and supporting it, you know.
Amen to that. All right. Well, I will let you get back to it there, Matt. I appreciate you spending the time with me.
My pleasure, Jim. Cheers, mate, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.